All right, so you want to really understand AI,
Yeah.
beyond the hype. You want to, get to its core.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to do today.
Okay, cool.
You brought this fascinating work by Brian Cantwell Smith to the table.
I did, yeah.
And we are diving deep into his ideas of reckoning versus judgment.
Right.
And I think this is going to be really eye-opening.
It is fascinating stuff.
So for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with his work,
Sure.
can you give us a little bit of background on who Brian Cantwell Smith is?
Yeah, so Brian Cantwell Smith is really a true pioneer in the field of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
His career spans decades, from MIT and Xerox PRC to Stanford.
Wow.
And he's always been at the forefront of AI research.
So really a veteran in this field?
Absolutely a veteran.
Yeah.
But I think what makes his perspective so interesting and so unique is that he approaches AI not just from a computer science perspective, but also from philosophy, cognitive science, even the history of science itself.
Wow, so he's really bringing all these different lenses to bear on this one topic.
Exactly.
I like that.
He asked the big questions about, what intelligence really means.
Okay.
Like, what does it actually mean?
And it's so interesting because we often hear this narrative of humans versus machines.
Right.
This sort of battle for dominance.
The robot uprising.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Smith seems to be saying let's hit the pause button on that for a second.
Yeah.
And really redefine the playing field.
Exactly. And I think he would say that whole people versus machines framing is actually a distraction. It keeps us from seeing the real issues at play.
I like where this is going.
So instead of that, he offers these two really interesting concepts.
Okay.
Reckoning and judgment.
Okay, so let's break down reckoning first.
Okay.
What is that all about?
So think of reckoning as kind of AI's current sweet spot.
Okay.
Where it's really, really good at...
It's a comfort zone.
It's comfort zone, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly good at things like processing information, manipulating, data-making predictions.
Okay.
All those impressive feats that we're seeing in AI right now.
Yeah, like when we see AI beating chess masters or, creating these incredible works of art.
Yeah, so whether it's a chess-playing algorithm, a complex database, or even these really advanced deep learning systems, they all excel at this idea of reckoning.
So they're like master calculators in a way?
Exactly.
Crunching numbers, spotting patterns at lightning speed.
Yeah, and doing it in a way that we can barely even comprehend.
Right.
Because it's happening so quickly and on such a massive scale.
But there's a catch, right?
There is a catch. And this is where Smith's argument gets really interesting.
Okay.
So they're doing all of this without actually understanding the meaning behind the data.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's like if you imagine a parrot.
Okay.
Reciting Shakespeare.
Okay.
It's impressive.
Right.
Like, wow, that parrot knows all the words.
Right, it knows the lines.
Right. But the parrot doesn't actually understand
the story,
the emotions, and the human context.
Right. It's just mimicry.
Exactly. It's just mimicry.
Okay.
And that's very different from true understanding.
Which leads us to judgment then.
Precisely.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
So unpack judgment for us.
Okay. So if reckoning is about calculations, judgment is about understanding.
Okay.
It's the gold standard, that nuanced and ethical decision-making that we humans strive for.
Right. Like we all want to make good judgments.
We do.
Yeah.
And it's not just about following rules or making calculations.
Right.
It's about understanding the context, the why behind the what.
It's interesting you say that because Smith gives that example of the babysitter.
Yes.
Right. And how it's not enough to just blindly follow the rule. Don't open the door to strangers.
Right.
Because what if there's a fire and it's a firefighter trying to get in?
Exactly.
Right. So true judgment requires adaptability, understanding the intention behind the rules, and making decisions based on a real-world understanding of the situation.
And absolutely.
And that's something that we don't necessarily see in AI yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
And this is where Smith argues the real distinction lies.
Okay.
AI, as it exists today, excels at reckoning.
Right.
Like, no doubt about it. It can do these incredible calculations.
Yeah, it can process information in ways that we could only dream of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that deep contextual understanding, that human ability to exercise judgment.
Yeah.
That's something that AI hasn't quite grasped yet.
And, when you think about it that way, it really does reframe how we view AI's progress, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it's not just about making these systems more powerful or more efficient. It's about bridging this gap between reckoning and judgment.
Exactly.
And that is a whole other challenge, isn't it?
It's a profound challenge.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that forces us to ask some really fundamental questions about what is intelligence even in the first place.
Exactly.
And this is where Smith's work takes this fascinating turn.
Okay.
He doesn't just stop defining reckoning and judgment.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on to explore what AI's success in reckoning actually reveals about the nature of reality itself.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
So how does AI connect to the nature of reality?
Well, he uses this great analogy.
Okay.
He calls it the submarine analogy.
Okay.
So imagine you're looking at a photograph of just like a typical room, a little bit cluttered, maybe some furniture books on a shelf.
Yeah, we see those all the time.
Right. It seems so simple.
Yeah, our brains just process that like instantly. Yeah.
But Smith's point is that what we perceive as this like simple room is actually the result of this incredibly complex process of interpretation happening in our brains.
Sure.
Our visual system with its billions of neurons is being bombarded with all this raw sensory data.
Yeah, it's amazing we can even like walk around without bumping into things.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is.
And to really illustrate this point, Smith actually commissioned an artist to create a painting of what the world might look like before our brains kind of assemble it into these recognizable objects and scenes.
I've seen this painting and it's
kind of trippy, right?
It's not something I would want to like hang on my wall.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a little intense.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And that's really Smith's point. The reality that we experience. With its neat little categories and its distinct objects.
Right, like we like to put things in boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just one way of interpreting the world.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you imagine those islands that you see above the water.
Okay.
They look separate.
Right.
But beneath the surface, they're all connected by this vast hidden structure.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that.
So we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to reality.
So what you're saying is AI might be able to see the rest of that iceberg.
That's exactly what Smith is suggesting.
Wow.
He argues that AI, particularly deep learning, is giving us a glimpse into that underwater structure, that submarine level of complexity.
Okay.
These systems, with their ability to process these massive data sets and find these subtle correlations, they're revealing a whole layer of reality that our human perception just glosses over.
So AI is like a submarine in this analogy, diving deep into the ocean of data, showing us what's really going on beneath the surface.
I love that.
Okay.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this realization has really profound implications.
Okay.
Not just for how we understand AI,
Uh-huh.
but also for how we understand our own intelligence.
Yeah.
And the limitations of our perception.
It's like saying the way we experience the world
might
actually be holding us back.
In a way, yeah.
Wow.
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is. It makes you think about the ethics of it all. Like if AI is uncovering all this stuff, but it's still operating on this level of like reckoning, as Smith puts it. What does that mean for its ability to like make responsible decisions?
Yeah, that's the core question, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't really understand the why, can it be held accountable?
Yeah.
And Smith would say, no.
Because ultimately, it's still going off of the data we give it, the data that we've given it, the categories that we've given it, the biases that we might not even realize we're encoding in these systems.
And the rules.
And the rules, exactly.
We set the parameters.
Exactly.
It's not like it's going out and learning this stuff on its own.
Right. It's not making its own judgments.
It's following our rules.
Yeah. It made me think of what you were saying earlier about how Smith talks about raising AI, not just training it.
Yes.
And that really stood out to me because it's not enough to just like make these systems faster and more efficient. Right. We have to think about.
We have to teach it.
The values that we're putting into this.
The ethics.
Yeah.
The ways of being in the world that we value.
This has been incredible.
It's fascinating stuff.
I mean, it's really made me think about AI in a completely different way.
It's really about going beyond just the surface level of like what these systems can do.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so important about these deep dives that we do. It's like we're not just trying to like scratch the surface here.
Right. We're trying to really like
we're going deep.
Go deep.
Yeah.
And I think we've done that today.
I agree.
So to our listener
yes.
out there, Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, this has been a fun one.
I think Brian Cantwell Smith.
He's a really interesting thinker.
He's given us a lot to think about.
He has.
And I hope it's given you a lot to think about as well.
I hope so.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.